When it first happened, the minutes felt like hours, the hours felt like days, and the horror of what happened, one detail after another, could hardly be processed, much less understood. Then days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into years. Memorials were built, wars were fought, victims' names were read, survivors tried to pick up the pieces, over and over again. But no matter how much time has passed, we vow to hold these memories. We will never forget those who were taken from us. The world changes and shifts this way and that. But one thing stays constant. One thing is steady. God. God weeps with us. God mourns with us. God bottles up our tears and records them in His book. He is closer to you than your own breath and remains the cornerstone of life. God is the solid ground holding us up as the world moves beneath us. It's as true today as it was on that day. Our God reigns. He reigns over principalities and powers. His dominion stretches beyond what our eyes can see. And when the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, our God reigns. We will always remember.
Good morning and welcome. We're going to sing a little bit, so why don't you stand with us? You are light in the darkness. You are hope for the hopeless. You are the God who never fails. You are full of compassion. You are love.
good morning. It's great to have you all here in person. It's so great to see faces, and I know we had last weekend off. Although to me, it seems like that was like, I don't know, it seems like that was weeks ago, and it was last weekend. It was like, well, anyway. So it's great because it gives the band a break. It gives the tech team a break, some of the others who do things every week around here. So, but I'm glad to have you here. Glad you're online with us, so welcome, and why don't you sing along with us? God, if you're here, you can take a seat for a minute. Now, these are tough times. I know my wife Julie and I talk. We're glad our kids are older, so I can't imagine what some of you younger parents are going through with all the school stuff, or if your kids are in, whether it's in the elementary ages or high school or college. It's tough. It's tough. Things are tough. Yesterday was very sombering kind of a day as we remember our 20 years. 20 years. I saw a post somebody had put on Facebook, and it said, I would never want to go through 9/11 again, never. But 9/12, right? Or the day after, when the world came together, when the United States came together, and that was a day, where we could celebrate heroes. For all of you who have families and friends that you lost on that day, our hearts really go out to you. I know a lot of us, some of us weren't even born yet. Some of you are listening or watching, you're like, man, I don't remember any of that, But for those of us who were there, probably remember, I can remember I'm like the scenes all day long and seeing myself in those scenes, because it hits you, So I hope, one of the great things I love about God is a God of hope. He really is. And, this is not what he desires. He never desired this at all, but he made us a promise that there's something better. And he's a part of that. And he promised us he's coming back. And that's what we have to look towards, that this is not the world that he made. It literally isn't. He made everything, but then man took it, and look what we've done. But he's coming back. And so may we set our hope on that, and may we share that hope with others as well. There's times like this where the church really needs to come together and focus in on that hope. And that's why I'm looking forward to our communion that's coming up that we're doing. And we're doing a little differently. So first of all, if you want to be a part of that communion, we're going to do a campfire communion. We're going to hang around a campfire. And so we want to know who wants to come first. So if you do want to come, put that on the connection card. If you're here in person, there's one in the back. You can put it on the connection card. If you have a tab, if you're online, you can see the tab. If you're on your phone, there should be 3 bars at the top, which takes you to the tabs. And put that on there. If not, find our email address on our website and that kind of stuff, and email me and say, hey, I want to be a part of this. And we're gonna do this a little, just for fun. We're gonna send you the date, and then we're gonna send you the time, and then we're gonna send you the day of the place that we're all gonna meet. Okay. And what we're going to do is come around, have some food together, have a campfire together, and then share communion. And not only to remember, but to look ahead, that there is a God who loves us so much that not only did he send his son to die for us, but his son is going to come back one day, and we look forward to that. If you are online, it is easy to hit all the tabs. There's kids tabs, there's also the giving tab, and there's a couple ways to support this ministry, and that is through the envelope if you're in person, that's easy, or the online, or you could text to give, and text to give, there's a new number, so just text NPNY, whatever amount, and then text it to that number. So if you're on your phone or whatever, just screenshot that or whatever so you see the number. If not, the number's online too, but it's easy to go to Secure Give as well. So we just want to make it simple as possible for you. Thank you so much for your gifts. Thanks for making things happen. It is, there's so much that goes into this, and a lot of people don't realize that, but not just the building that we use to film and to broadcast, to be here in person, but all the equipment and stuff that happens that makes it all take place. So I'm so grateful for that. And I'm most grateful for those who serve every single week. So thank you for doing that. Let's just pray together. Father, thank you. Thank you for what you are doing here in this ministry. And Lord, we have got to be a beacon of hope. We've got to. So Lord, may we have those few friends that we can, lean on, that we can share our burdens and our concerns, and be there to support one another. But Lord, help us to always keep in mind the message that we have to share with the world. And may we never forget that we are here to bring hope to them. Because so many are afraid, so many are hopeless, and they need you. And you left us here, you put us here to bring that message, so help us to do that. May you comfort the hearts and the minds of so many people hurting right now. So many that have relived some memories from a day that was so tragic. To some who are hurting right now as some of those things haven't ended. And some of the current things going on right now are just bringing it all back. So Lord, with heavy hearts, we come to you as our God. And we ask for you to lift this burden. And help us to find our strength not in man, but in you. And Lord, with that, we offer up our hearts and our minds and Lord's and our singing back to you. Amen.
love has been true, and with all of my life, I will worship you. There wasn't a day that you weren't by my side. There wasn't a day that you let me fall. In all of my life, your love has been true, and with all of my life, I will worship you. I will worship you, oh Lord, I will worship. I will worship you. I will worship. There wasn't a day that you weren't by my side. There wasn't a day that you let me fall. In all of my life, your love has been true, and with all of my life, I will worship you. There won't be a day that you're not by my side. There won't be a day that you let me fall. In all of my life, your love has been true, and with all of our life, we will worship you. We will worship you, oh Lord. We will worship you, we will
Well, I bet you remember growing up as like later teen years, the early adult years, maybe you lived at home when you had really no responsibilities, but it's at the time where you wanted to do something, and it's like, you know what? I'm older now. I could do this, and you did it because you wanted to do it, right? And now looking back, you're like, okay, that was just stupid, right? And come on, we all have that thing that we did, right? And it's like, we're wondering, why didn't everybody tell you? But people did. They told you that was stupid, but you did it anyway because you wanted to do what you wanted to do, right? Today we're going to start a new series, and it's called Right in the Eye. And it doesn't originate from me. It originates from Andy Stanley and NorthPointe Ministries. So I'm so grateful for those guys because they really do help the local church, and it's amazing. And what we're going to do with this series is we're going to look at an Old Testament book. And we had looked at a couple stories from this book a while ago. But it's one of the strangest books, if not the strangest books in all the Old Testament. And so I want to let you know that because I want to give you a heads up, because when we're going to talk about some things today, you're going to be like, okay, that's bizarre. It's like, yeah, it is. It's bizarre. Okay, and we're looking at the book of Judges, and the book of Judges settles between when Israel is just coming into the land and settling the land to the time of the kingdom, when the kingdom was established under really the rule of David. And the book is preceded by the book of Joshua. So that's the book of Joshua when they come into the land. And that's back in 1380. And this is, BC. And then you have Judges, which is in the middle. And then you have David, which is about 1050, okay? So basically you get a little time frame. Because some people ask, well, how long ago was David? Well, David was about 3,000 years ago, okay? So you have this time period, about 330 years, roughly. And at this point, Israel as a nation is not a nation. They are more like a commonwealth of 12 tribes. To describe it to best in our understanding, it'd be like going back in our history about 200 years when we were a commonwealth, okay? Each state was a commonwealth. Well, actually, some of them still are. I'm not sure what that means. But anyway, we had 13 colonies, and they came to this land, and they said, we want to settle it, and they were colonies. So a colony would come over, they'd settle, and they would have the state of New Jersey or whatever, and they were individual colonies, but they were united. They had a common heritage, and they had a common belief, and their belief was, hey, we believe we want to be free, we want to have freedom of religion, we want to be free from an oppressive government, we want to be free just to raise our families, And so they had some abiding principles. That's why we have the Declaration of Independence and we have the Constitution. These are principles. But we want to be left alone. So every commonwealth, every colony said, look, we still want to be able to govern ourselves. This is what Israel is like. At that point, they were 12 tribes that were scattered throughout the land. And each of them had a common heritage. They had a common belief system in a God. And God was supposed to be their king. That's what God wanted. But at this point in time, they were like, okay, I know we have God and we all believe in him sort of, but we're going to do our own little thing, because they were trying to govern themselves and not let God rule them. And so God would bring them these judges, and that's why we have the book of Judges. And they were leaders that would come for a time in different areas of the country as they were spread out in these 12 tribes. They would not rule the whole area. They would rule parts of it at times, because again, they're divided. They're not one nation. The nations had abandoned God. And it's not that they didn't believe in him, it's not that they didn't pray to him and stuff like that, they didn't have their rituals. It's just that they had this idea that God was there and they could sort of do their own thing. They wanted to do what they wanted to do. And they got into this cycle, and here's how the cycle goes. It was a cycle of disobedience. They would disobey God, and then guess what? Disaster would come, and there are different kinds of disaster. And then they would come to a place where they say, hey, God, send us a deliverer, and God would send them a deliverer. And then they say, we'll never do that again, okay? And we know what this is like, because we do the same thing too, right? You're speeding, right? Maybe some of you don't speed, some of you speed, right? And you're speeding, and you're like, and you're fine. You get away for years. Then all of a sudden, a police officer pulls you over, you're upset, you're mad, but he gives you a ticket. And then you see the price tag on that ticket. Then you see the price tag when your insurance goes up. And guess what? You're like, I'll never do that again. Never do that again. Till another couple weeks go by, and then guess what? You do it again. And that's what it was like. They would say, oh, no, we'll never do that again. And then they do it again. The book of Judges, 330 years, is a time where that's how Israel lived. They're just like, yeah, we're not going to do that, and then they do it. And then it gets worse, and it gets worse. And what we're going to look at today is at the end of the book, where after 330 years of doing what they wanted to do, and everybody's sort of doing their own thing, this is what happens. And this happens to any culture who doesn't have some kind of ruling guide or principles, or then they just abandon them. And this is what happens. So the story begins with a Levite. And here's the Levite. The Levite this is from the tribe of Levi, one of the 12 tribes. He has no name, so we're not given his name through this whole story. He's from the town of Ephraim, and now keep in mind, they get to do what they want to do. That's how they viewed the world, right? And he has this girlfriend, okay? She's sort of a concubine, so she's a concubine / girlfriend / wife / slave. It was, it's one of those things that you sort of hard to put a handle on it, okay? And this is something that this was against the customs in Israel. This is not something they would have done, but they adopted it from the Canaanites. They just thought, oh, that sounds like a good thing, so, some of them adopted it. So this is what this Levite had. He had one of these concubines, okay? That was sort of / wife, sort of, It was one of those things. And she's from Bethlehem. And then what happens is, because they have this sort of iffy kind of relationship, she she cheats on him, okay? Which I'm not really sure how that works if there's not a real commitment. But anyway, she cheats on him, and then he finds out, and then she finds out that he knows, and they're in this whole thing, And then basically she runs home. She goes home. So she goes back to her parents. But he's like, oh, man, I guess I miss her, kind of thing. So he follows her home. And he gets to the home of his father-in-law, and the father-in-law's like, oh, man, this is so great to see you. And so not sure of the relationship or how much of a relationship they had at that point, but he's like glad to see him. He's like, this is great, glad you're visiting. So he comes to visit. He's coming to get his concubine/wife/slave. And they start talking, and they start having, he's like, come on, let me pull out some food. And so they start having some snacks. Then he brings out the wine or whatever else, and they're starting to drink. And so they drink, and they have fun, and they're just hanging out, and I don't know, maybe shooting some pool or something together. And then what happens is the day gets late, and so the father-in-law says, well, why don't you just stay the night? So it's like, okay, sounds good, so we'll stay the night. So they decide to stay the night, figure they'll leave in the morning, get a good start. So the same thing happens in the morning. He's ready to go, he's ready to pack up, and his father's like, well, why don't you have some food before you go? You don't want to leave it on a full stomach, right? Some of you have your parents that do this, right, when you visit. And it's like, no, have a full stomach. And so they start drinking again, they start eating again, and it gets late in the day, and this goes on for 5 days. Like, this just goes on and on and on. And the guy's like, I want to leave, And it's, it's funny, but it's like they just keep getting in this cycle. And they're like, the day gets too long, and then they stay, When I was a kid growing up, we used to hang out with my cousins. And it was on my mom's side of the family, so that was like the only other family. And our cousins that were our age, actually the three of us old, because there were 3 boys, and there were 6 of us. But anyway, we used to hang out together, and we used to play games. And, our parents would get talking, and they would come and they'd tell us, hey, it's time to go. And we'd be like, okay. And we look at the clock and go, oh, guys, we got 2 more hours yet. This is like, and now some of you are older, that because maybe your kids or whatever do that to you. And so it was one of those things where they just kept going and kept going. So finally on the 5th day, he's like, okay. And maybe he's had enough of his in-law or something like this. But he's like, I've had enough. No, we really got to get going. Well, they have the food and they have a little wine and whatever. And then day goes on, and then it gets to a point where he's like, no, we've really got to go. We got to get going. So they're leaving later in the day, because that feeds into the story. And so he leaves, the concubine, the servant, and they go to Gibeah. And Gibeah is a town of Benjamin. Okay, so this is Benjamin is one of the 12 tribes. And so it's under that jurisdiction. And this is one of those towns. It's late in the day. They need to stop to rest for the night. They're looking for a small town just to rest. And towns were small back then. It wasn't like these big cities that we have. And they don't want to stay in a town that belongs to a foreigner outside of one of the 12 tribes of Israel, okay? Because that could be dangerous. They want to stay where they're part of their people. And so they find this town, and when you're a stranger in a town, you're coming in, you're looking for a place to stay. There's no motel, no Motel 6, we leave the lights on or anything like that. What you would do is you would go down to the center of the town, and you would just hang out. So to put it in our perspective, you go down to the red and white over there, and you just hang out for the day or for the evening, and you sort of wait. And you wait until somebody from the town is polite enough to come and see you there and say, oh, hey, are you new to town? And you'd be like, yeah, we're just passing through, or we're doing whatever. I said, oh, well, come into our house. And they were very hospitable. That's just part of the custom of the day. Well, they waited, and nobody came. And they're waiting, and nobody comes. And they're waiting, and nobody comes. So here he is, this man, this Levite, right, that we don't know his name, and his concubine. And they also have a servant with him. And finally, towards the end of the day, this older man comes in, and he's coming back from traveling. He comes into town. He sees him there. He's like, oh, hey, are you guys new? And so he explains the story. Yeah, we're traveling from here to here, but it got late, so we want to rest. And the man's like, okay, well, why don't you come to our house? He's like, hey, we're not going to be any trouble to you. We got our food. And the man's like, no, I'll take care of you guys. Come here. We'll have some meal together. We'll, some wine together and just hang out. But don't stay in town, man, because that's like dangerous. So they go back to his house, right? And remember, I told you it's going to get strange? Okay, this is where it starts to get strange, okay? Just giving you a heads up. So what happens is, here they are in their house, they're getting settled, and there's a knock at the door, and this is what happens. Men surround the house, and they say this. They say, bring the man out who came into your house so that we can have sex with him. And you're like, whoa, told you it got strange, right? Now, these are wicked men, and they don't like strangers. And this is not about the whole sex thing. This is all about humiliation. This is another Canaanite ritual that they basically adopted as people. So when the stranger comes into the land, if they humiliate him, then word will get out and no more strangers will come to their land. So it's all about protecting their people, okay? So you have to understand this, okay? So this is what they do. And so the owner goes out and he says, so he goes out trying to reason and said, no, my friends. He said, don't be so vile. Since this man is my guest, don't do this outrageous thing. He's trying to take them into his care. He's like, that's basically the law of hospitality. You brought someone into your home, you protect them. And this is what he's trying to do. And he viewed it as they're under his protection, so he would not let this happen to them, okay? I told you it's one of Strange's books, okay? So here's what happens. Look at it. This is the stories you never heard in Sunday school, okay? Because this is why, okay? The owner says, look, so this is the owner. Look, here's my virgin daughter and his concubine, okay? I will bring them out to you now, and you can use them and do whatever you wish. Can you imagine? I mean, I can't even imagine living in a culture like this, but this is what it's like. In a society where there's no justice, there's no laws, or there are laws, but nobody listens to them anyway, right? Mob rules, and whatever the mobs say, you sort of just go along with it, okay? So he tries to reason, okay? But what happened is the men wouldn't listen. It says the men would not listen to him, so the man took his concubine and sent her outside to them, and we're not going to go on with that, but so the man, this is the Levite, he takes his concubine and he basically just shoves her out the door, closes the door, and lets go. And they're like, okay, we'll see what happens, right? And you're like, wow. And what happens to her as the verse goes on, and you know, it is just horrendous. It's just horrible. The next morning, they wake up, and he opens the door to get his concubine and then to go home. And he opens the door, and there she is laying on the doorstep. And he goes to wake her and says, come on, let's go. And she's dead. So he takes her, he throws her over his donkey, and him and his servant and the donkey, and they go home, and he gets home. And when he gets home, he's like, this is not right. This is not right. Something's got to be done. Right? And he gets to one of those points where it's like, you ever get there where you want to write that letter, and sometimes we don't, but sometimes you just do because you're like, somebody has to say something. And so he decides that I got to do something. So I got to send notice to the 12 tribes. We got to tell everybody, 12 tribes of Israel. We're going to tell them that this is the stuff that's going on. Somebody's got to do something. Now, he figures if he sends a letter, you know, sometimes how much a letter gets, it doesn't get any results, right? So he goes, I'm going to make an impact. So he decides, I told this is a strange book, okay? He decides to cut up his concubine into 12 pieces. And he, takes it and takes apart, takes his, communication basically, and he sends it to the 12 tribes of Israel, including Benjamin, where this had taken place. Now, can you imagine if you were like the mayor of the town, FedEx truck pulls up, and you get this package, and you're like, you open it up, it's like, whoo. Okay, well, it had that kind of impact. So all the tribes are getting this message, and this is what happened. Everyone saw this and was saying to one another, such a thing has never been seen or done, not since the day the Israelites came up out of Egypt. Now, we're not talking about the body parts. They're talking about something so horrendous happened to somebody. And this was the breaking point. Have you ever been there? Where it's like, I can't take this anymore. I got to do something, right? This is where they are. So together they've realized it's gotten so bad, they can't let this go. It says they don't say this, but they're basically thinking, we become like the Canaanites. The people we literally took over their land, we've become like them. And how dare we do this to one of our brothers? So this is what they conclude. So we must do something. We must do something. So guys, speak up. So they're all coming together. Let's speak up. Let's do something. Messages are sent to the tribes. The tribes then send messages back. They come together and they put together an army. And they demand justice for this. Then all of Israel, it says this, then all of Israel from Dan to Beersheba and from the land of Gilead came together as one and assembled before the Lord at Mizpah. And you're thinking, this is awesome, isn't it? Like we're going to seek the Lord out. We're going to do what's right. Remember, this is the book of Judges, okay? And they're like, we can't let this go on. So they make a vow together. Now, Benjamin doesn't show up, obviously, because Benjamin was part of this whole thing. But the 11 tribes make this vow together, and they're like, this is our vow. We will never give our daughters to any Benjamin. Nobody of the tribe of Benjamin will ever get one of our daughters in marriage. We're done. Now, was it a good vow or not? That's what they made. That's what they did, right? Now, all the tribes had gotten the invite to come to this meeting. Obviously, Benjamin doesn't come. So the 11 tribes gather together now to go against the tribe of Benjamin. 400,000 soldiers. 400,000 soldiers. Can you imagine? All because this one guy took this one person in and just it became disaster. So 400,000 soldiers come against Benjamin. And the Benjamites, so this is their chance. They're like, basically, okay, send out the perpetrators so we can deal with them. And the Benjamites like, no, we'll deal with them. Because again, the independents, we're the Benjamites, we'll deal with our own. You guys leave, right? They were going to take that. So they attack. 400,000. Guess how many Benjamites there are? There's 26,000. Right? Just weigh it, right? And so they're thinking there's no way. Now the Benjamites, what's so interesting is that it's described like this. As they describe the men and ready to go out to battle, they said they have 700, and they say left-handed men, who can sling a stone at a hair. Isn't that pretty cool? I'm like, wow. It's not like hitting an exit sign or something like that or one of these lights. It's like they can hit a hair. They could just go and, man, gone, right? That's pretty cool. So what you thought was going to happen, what they thought was going to happen, isn't what happened. Benjamin comes out against 400,000 men, wipes out tens of thousands of them. And Israel flees back. Like, oh my goodness, we didn't expect this, right? They go out there on the second day, and guess what happens? Same thing. They lose tens of thousands again. And they're like, oh my goodness. The third day, they get a little wise. They come up with a strategy. And the strategy is here. We're going to go again, attack. Then we're going to pull back, let Benjaminites think that we're losing, draw them out of the city, and then we'll ambush them kind of thing. And this is what they do. So they do this. And in the meantime, part of Israel goes around to the back, and they attack the city, and they burn the city. The Benjaminites realize what happens. They want to go protect their homeland, so they head back, and they get wiped out along the way. And there's a great detail about how the whole battle happens. And then you have to understand, and I don't understand. I've never fought in a war. I've never been in the service. I don't know what it's like, but I understand when you fight and you're in a battle that. And maybe it's adrenaline or whatever, but when you're in a battle and you've watched your friends die, when you've watched people next to you die, when you're filled with, you're probably injured, you're filled with blood, and you go into these battles, you're enraged. And they've had 3 days of this now. And they are enraged. And now they have defeated them pretty good. So now what they're going to do is they are going to go from city to city to city, every city in Benjamin, in the tribe of Benjamin, and they're going to destroy them all, and they're going to kill every man, woman, and child. That's their strategy. And that's what they start to do. Until they get to a point and they're like, oh no. Like, what have we done? What are we doing? If we keep doing this, they're like, and I don't know when it lit up in their heads, but all of a sudden they're like, we're going to wipe out an entire tribe of Israel, and then we'll only be 11 tribes. We can't do that. We have 12 tribes. What have we done? So then they hear a rumor that 600 of the soldiers who had fled as they were fleeing back and trying to get back to their town, they flee to the desert. And so they understand there's 600 men that are in the desert. And they're like, okay, this is good. They're probably fearful of us because we're still a big army. But this is good because if they're still alive, there's still a chance for Benjamin, right? There's still a chance for this tribe. We got 600 men. So now all we have to do is find wives for them, and everything will be good. Only, they all made this vow. Remember, they had this vow, and the vow said, we can't give our daughters to them. So what are we going to do? So they start thinking and rattling through their brains again. Somebody comes up with an idea. Hey, let's see if there's any cities from Benjamin that didn't come to attack us. Okay, that's a good idea. So they find out that there's one city called the town of Jabesh Gilead, and they hadn't come out. So like, this is great. So we got a whole city. There's probably some women in the city, and we could give those guys to the women from that city to these guys. Okay, so here's the plan. We're going to go in, we're going to attack the city, we're going to kill all the men and women, except the younger ladies who have never been married, never been with a man, and then we'll capture them, okay, and we'll bring them out of the city. Okay, go. And they do this. And so that's what they do. And they go and they capture and they bring back 500 young ladies. Like, this is awesome. Okay, can we lure these guys out of the desert and give them these brides? And they're like, okay, so they make this arrangement, all this stuff, but guess what? There's 100 guys that are out of luck, aren't they? Okay? It's like, what are we going to do? So somebody comes out with another brilliant plan. Well, we can't give them our wives, not willingly. So there has to be another idea. Well, we got this. Do you know there's this festival? And it's down at Shiloh, and everybody knows about this festival. It's a great festival, And there's all this kinds of, food and dancing and all that kind of stuff. And during this whole festival, the young ladies, they go and they do this like dance thing, right? So we have an idea. It's a great idea. We're going to have the men who didn't get any wives, okay? They're going to hide along the outskirts of this festival. And then you guys are allowed to go in and grab one of the young ladies, okay? You could throw her over your shoulder. You could pull her hair. However you want to do it, just go, take one of the ladies, and go. Because then we've fulfilled our vow to God, because we haven't given you any of our daughters as wives. And then you get a wife. This sounds like a great idea, right? And this is what they're thinking. It's a great idea. And then when the fathers ask, oh my goodness, what happened to our daughter? We just tell them, this is in the best interest of the nation of Israel, that your daughters just get to be taken off. So it'll be okay. Just trust us, right? So it's a great idea, right? And so the book of Judges, this is how the story ends. Okay, and it ends with this. In those days, Israel had no king. Had no king. And so what happens when you have no king? The people lived horribly. And these events, right, these events that take place in Israel, if you ask a Jewish person, say, hey, do you remember that? They'll be like, yeah, we're not proud of that one, right? And these are the stories you definitely don't hear in Sunday school. These are the stories you don't tell your kids, except maybe around Halloween time or something, right? The original Chainsaw Massacre, right? But they were without a king. And everyone did what was right in their own eyes. And the book of Judges ends with this horrible story. To each one, it was right. They were doing their own thing. Another way to state this is this. In those days, there was no binding moral consensus, so people followed their own moral compass. Each one thought what they did was right. And who are you? Or who am I to tell them that they were wrong? They're right. And they think they are. And it starts early on. The mob that surrounds the house thought, what were they thinking? We got to protect our town. You don't understand. People come from outside, and we got to protect it. And so this is the best way we know. Yeah, we adopted it from the Canaanites, but you know what? It's a good idea. Let's just go with this, okay? The Levite, the man, okay, that we don't know his name, right? How did he respond? He's like, oh my goodness, they're going to come and get me. Well, she's the unfaithful one. Makes sense to me, right? I'll just give him to her. I just give her to them. So he does that. He throws her outside. And then guess what? When he gets home, what does he think? He thinks the best thing to do is what? To cut up a body. Send the message. And then guess what? When everybody decided what to do, they're like, we got to do something. What's the best thing to do? Take 400,000 men against this house in this town, right? That's the best thing to do. See, in their own eyes, it's right. Because if we don't do this, we're only going to have 11 tribes now. So guess what? We've got to get them wives. And we got to provide a way for the other 100 guys to get a wife. So this just makes sense to us. So let's do it. One thing after another, right? Individually, they're all thinking, what we're doing, this is right and this seems good. And we fall into that trap too. You see, there's an unspoken American dream, and it sort of goes like this: the freedom to do what we want, when we want, with whom we want. And there's a part of that in all of us. Now, I'm not talking about our liberties and our freedoms that we've decided on as a country. I'm talking about we have adopted into this idea that I just want to do what I want to do, and nobody should tell me otherwise. And then we add a little excuse, just in case. We say, as long as it, what? You can fill in the blank. As long as it doesn't hurt, right? As long as it doesn't hurt anybody. As long as it doesn't hurt anybody, it's good, right? Really. Now, there's so many things wrong with that. There's so many things wrong with that. And that's what we're going to talk about over the next few weeks, okay? Because we've bought into this, and we have a culture that's bought into this, right? And every day, we are bombarded, right? We see it in our movies, we see it in the advertising, we hear it in our songs. We're bombarded with the idea that it's all about you. Make sure you satisfy you. You have to do what's best for you, right? And we hear this, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody. And there's problems with that. You see, the thing is, it generally works out better for men than for women. The problem, one of the other problems, is only the super rich can afford it. Because they have armies of lawyers. I mean, we know this. This isn't against our judicial system. It's not against a lawyer. Because guess what? When we need a lawyer, it's good to have one. But the reality is we know this in our culture because here's what happens. You could get away with things. And we know this because we've seen it. I don't care who it is, okay? It could be a politician, it could be a movie star, it could be whoever. And you watch and you see and you can read documentation on evidence saying, oh my goodness, this person is so guilty. Why aren't we hearing them going to jail or being even on trial, right? And we're like, why is this not happening? Why? Because they got an army of lawyers. And as long as your army of lawyers is bigger than this army, that's how you win. And guess what? Who could afford that? The super rich. Works out good for them. And this is why you never hear stuff like a teacher saying to her kids, okay, kids, I'll send you all home. Guess what? There's no homework. Actually, I got one thing for you to do today. I want you to go home, and I want you to do whatever you want to do, okay? And I'm going to send a notice home to your parents to tell them this is what I told you, right? No teacher would ever do that, right? Can you imagine getting pulled over by the policeman who was supposed to give you a ticket and said, oh, I know you're going 90 in a 30-mile-an-hour zone, but you know what? I had to pull you over because I'm just encouraging you, be a little safe out there. Just be a little safe out there. But really, do whatever you want, right? No psychologist is going to sit down from a couple or from an individual and say, look, I know things are really tough and what you're going through, no good one, okay, is ever going to say, but here's the thing, you got to remember, it's all about you. Just go out there and do whatever you want. Because they're on the backside of this. They're the ones who have to show up at your house when somebody's been hurt or there's been a crime. They know what it's like to counsel through a couple or an individual because somebody did what they wanted to do. And the teachers know what it's like when they have to deal with children of parents who are teaching their kids it's okay to do whatever you want, whenever you want. The other thing is this, and I said it already, is that generally this works out better for men and women. It does. That was part of our story. It just does. This is nothing new. You know this, right? Because where women have rights, they had to fight for them. In any culture. You see, where there's no king, there's no moral consensus. And only individual morals are the compass. And in that, women suffer the most. And we're seeing that firsthand, right in front of our very eyes, aren't we? We're seeing that. As a nation who had made some amazing progress for women's rights and all that kind of stuff, is lost all that overnight as we see women being tortured and everything else. Right out of Afghanistan. We're seeing it unfold right before our eyes. We know this. And so the primary problem is this: you can't do what's right in your own eyes without eventually hurting somebody. It just doesn't work. It's not possible. What will happen, and you know this, what happens is somebody will get hurt. Eventually you hurt you. you hurt you. That's what happens. When we do what's right in our own eyes, we will eventually hurt us. And guess what? You're somebody. You're somebody. You're going to get hurt. You'll get hurt because you will be mastered by something. All of us are. Because that thing we thought was so cool, remember when we started doing it? We thought, oh, this is so cool. I'm like 21 now. I got my own car. This is so cool. I can do what I want to do, right? And so we started a habit way back here, and we thought, this is so cool. And guess what? That habit, who's in control now? The habit, right? And now we're trying to break it. You know how hard it is to break it? And it doesn't matter what it is, because we all have those things. And we started thinking, this was so cool. This is going to be great. And guess what? Now we're over here, and we're like, man, I can't break this. Sometimes it's thought patterns. Sometimes it's eating patterns. Sometimes it's things we do, and we've been mastered by it. Who's mastering who now, right? You see, you hurt the people with you because we influence them, and they influence us, right? But we hurt them because we got our friends to do things that our friends wouldn't do before. Come on, we know that, right? That could be something stupid, but now they do that, and guess what? Some got hurt doing it, or some are hurting now because they're doing it, right? Or maybe it's your boyfriend or your girlfriend, and you introduce them to things that they didn't do before, and now they do. And we know this because our friends have influenced us. Good and bad, but they've influenced us. And of course, you hurt the people that care about you. When you do what you want, you hurt somebody, and you hurt the people who care most about you. Like we hurt our parents. We hurt our spouse. We can hurt our coworkers, hurt our friends. And it goes beyond this. We hurt the people coming along after you. I mean, Dad walked off, right? Maybe. And that's affected every relationship you've ever had since. Maybe even marriages. Or maybe it wasn't Dad, maybe it was Mom, or maybe it was your brother, or maybe it was an uncle, or maybe it was, your mean grandmother, or something like that. But we have this happen to us, and then here's the thing. That's why we're all a little dysfunctional, okay? We just are, We tell our kids that all the time. We're dysfunctional. Why? Because we came from dysfunctional families, And not that bad. I mean, not that bad. We look back at our history. It wasn't that bad, but it was dysfunctional enough that guess what? Julie and I, we're messed up, okay? So guess what? We pass it on. We pass on that dysfunction. And we all know it because we all have that little weird thing we do, right? And guess where we got it? We got it from whoever or whatever, probably Mom and Dad, and they used to do it, and now we do it. And yeah, that's why we're messed up, And then we pass it on to our kids. Because it doesn't end with us. We pass it on to our kids. It's a myth that you could do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it, with whomever you want to do it. Because especially as a follower of Jesus Christ, here's the thing. We want to give God the best. We don't want such a low goal. We want a higher goal. How about if we said it like this? I should be able to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want, as long as it helps somebody. Isn't that a better goal? That's a much better goal. Instead of aspiring to, I'm just going to go be on the low rung of the totem pole, man, I want to aspire to greatness, and I want to help others aspire to greatness. Why should we think or try to act like, hey, we're just going to get away with as much as we can get away with? Because in the end, here's what happens. And we don't realize that. We hate this word. But in the end, the reality is we're all hypocrites. We do. Because when things get bad, guess who we call? That policeman who pulled us over. Now, maybe you never had this happen. Actually, I've hardly ever had it happen. But anyway, that policeman who we're mad at because he's just doing his job and protecting us, right? But we're mad at him, and we're mad because we got to pay a ticket, right? He's the same guy we're going to call, or gal we're going to call when our house gets broken into, right? And Dad, who we may have had issues with or whatever else, guess what? We're on the side of the road because our car broke down. Guess who we call? Hey, Dad. Or if we end up in jail, or we end up getting pregnant, guess who we call? Mom, would you Right? We all do this. Or maybe it's the church or God, and we say, you know what? I'm not going to have God tell me what to do. We might not say that verbally, but we sort of pull back from God, or we pull back from the church because, man, I'm not going to have any accountability. Man, they're telling me I should do this, and no, I want to. But guess who we come back to when things get bad? We start coming back to God, start coming back to a church because we need people around us. We do, right? When we reap what we sow, what we do is we look for a king to bail us out. We're looking for somebody to come and deliver us, to save us. And maybe that's why you're here today. Maybe that's why you're a part of a church. Maybe that's why you come to church. Because we are all looking for someone to help us. And I believe as followers of Jesus Christ, here's the thing, man. We are called by him to call on him. And with whatever we're going through in life, in anything we need information about, we need help with, we need to figure out how to handle this situation, the best insight comes not from our own minds and our thoughts, and we think, man, this is good, I like this, you know. It comes from the mind and the heart of God. This is one of those messages, okay, that we walk away with, and we're like, man, I wish my friend was here today. I wish he was hearing this because I've been, man, really struggling. I just wish he would hear this stuff, that you just can't do what you want to do when you want to do it, you know. Or I wish my spouse was here. I wish my kids were here, you know. And we're just thinking, man, it'd be so awesome if they were just here. And we forget how easily all of us are swayed into this. All of us. And we have to be so careful that we don't drift that way. And we have to be so careful to always be asking ourselves the question, where am I in this cycle of Judges? Where am I? Am I in the disobedience phase where, yeah, I'm sort of doing my own thing, figuring it'll work out in the end, because God will understand? Am I in a destruction phase where I'm starting to reap some of the benefits, if you want to call them that, of all that stuff? Or am I in the salvation phase where it's like, God, just deliver me, just save me from this? But the bigger question is this. If you were God, okay? If you're God, and I'm glad you're not, and you're glad I'm not, okay? If you were, how would you respond to a people who do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it? And that's what we're going to ask of these next few weeks. Father, thank you so much that you brought us a King, you brought us a Savior, Jesus Christ. And so, Lord, we take these things to our mind, to our heart today, that you have left us in your word, things that, man, don't make sense. And we look at this and we read your word and like, this is so far gone, but yet you left it there for us to read, for us to learn from. So maybe it would scare us a little bit, maybe a lot. But most of all, as followers of Jesus Christ, it would bring us back to that place where we said, we committed that we would follow you, not ourselves. And so, Lord, we ask that you help us to do that. To those who have never committed, may they do that right now. To those of us who have, Lord, may you prompt us in our hearts and mind to search our hearts and to discover what you want to speak to us, not only today, but through this entire series. We ask this through Jesus Christ. Amen. So I hope you have a great week. I know some of you are going to go home and you're going to be, oh man, I got to read that story. It's a big story, but it's good and you'll enjoy it. So, and you'll get a little bit more feedback of what you've been going through and hear more of the details and all that kind of stuff. But next week, we're going to continue with Right in Your Eye, and I hope you'll be here with us. Have a great week.